Welcome to Venture Unscripted, a podcast where we talk with founders and entrepreneurs about their journey from 0 to 1. Welcome to Venture Unscripted today. Today I have with me Mike Marsiglia, and I've also got Shawn Crowley, the co-CEOs of Atomic Object, and I'm really excited to talk with you guys today. So welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We're excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. I'd love to have you guys explain. Atomic Object has this great brand. What is Atomic for the folks that don't know what Atomic is?
Thanks, yeah. So Atomic Object designs and builds custom software for a wide variety of clients. And I always like to think about like some examples that kind of help us a little bit. So we built really big production software for a trucking company that builds transmissions. They work with telematics providers, so all the trucks on the road chirping up information, right? We built a big platform to aggregate that data and really help them do diagnostics. We've helped mid-sized companies come in and even replace their ERP solutions that run their companies. And then we've helped small companies, basically build their web and mobile products. And what kind of cross-cuts all that is just really good software, product management, design. We bring all the pieces together to really help them innovate.
Yeah, as a consulting firm, it's really wrapping up product development, which we'll internally call delivery. Our delivery team being experts at high throughput delivery is a discipline. Human-centered design is a discipline. And then agile software engineering is a discipline. And then we do just enough research, design, and planning to be able to feed high throughput design and development teams to create functioning software for our customers. We've been doing it for 20 plus years. We started in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We now have offices in Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, Chicago, and recently launched an office in Raleigh.
Yeah, you guys are really expanding. It's really cool to see you guys do that. And you guys have such a great reputation for quality. I gotta ask, how have you developed, how did you develop that? What do you guys think the secret sauce of that is?
Yeah, it started technically, and Roger Martin, the business consultant and school prof, I think it was his book, The Design of Business. They talked about the knowledge funnel and how a lot of companies, they start by solving a mystery, and the funnel is wide. You're searching for the mystery you're going to solve, and then you develop some heuristics, and then you really get into when you scale, it's exploitation. You've nailed something and you can spread it. And I do believe quality, defined slightly differently over time, is the mystery we've always solved. And it started with engineering quality in the late 90s, early 2000s, when Atomic was started by a former GVSU computer science professor and another co-founder who's computer science background, who came back to Michigan after working for the NSA. And they started using at the time what was called extreme programming and agile methods. And a lot of that was around test automation. Mm-hmm. So you would write computer code first, test-driven development, and the tests would actually help you create highly modular, which means more flexible and more easily changeable software. And then you would write the implementation code for the features to satisfy your tests. And what this meant for continuous delivery is when you push a new feature into production, instead of having to go through days or weeks of manual testing or being worried that you're going to have negative operational side effects of trying to release new value, you can run thousands in a mature software suite, thousands and thousands of tests, some exercising the full stack end to end, some tiny little bits of code. And rest assured, everything that you built before still works.
And this was at the time where software was distributed on CDs. Right. So there was always this idea of what is the null software launch cost, right? So if I have to just redistribute my software, make 0 changes, what does that cost me, right? That costs real money because you'd have to figure out who you need to ship CDs to, reburn it, get them to it, get clients to update, so on and so forth. So the cost of a bug in the field was extremely high. So and the software world was just riddled with bugs. So it's how can we build quality into our processes through test automation, through a radical thing at the time called pair programming, 2 people working on the same code base, who'd have think, right? And how do we deploy that? And then, to Shawn's point, how for us, quality has always been the mystery is, when we first started, like having those really high quality engineering principles made us really good at building high quality software. And then over time, we learned, what's actually the most expensive software you can write is really high quality software that nobody uses, right? So then we learned, okay, our clients really need to take on the product risk of doing stuff, and we need to take away the engineering risk for them, but we also know things. And so like, how can we bring design to bear, right? And at that time, the world was moving more to web. So like it was a little more fluid of what you could do. And it's like, how can we bring some best practices? Like, how do we use paper prototypes to like test with a client? How do we interview customers? How do we learn to build the right thing? Because if you're building the right thing, you can really reduce the cost of other software that you're building. So you can improve quality that way. You can move faster. And that just continued to spiral for us into like, okay, how do we get better at product and project management? How do we keep growing that way? And the ethos of the company, like one of our value mantras is teach and learn. And that's me and Shawn's favorite value mantra for Atomic. And the company that we want to continue to grow and foster is one where people that come and work with us at Atomic, whether they're like clients, our employees, anyone else, that they just love teaching, they love learning, learning organization, curious people, and that just reinforces that. How do we continue to make this better? How do we make it better than what we were doing before?
Yeah, you guys have really, I feel like you've really gone into that and achieved that, what you've set out to, because the Atomic brand is really well known. And one of the things I'm really curious about too is how have you guys gone from this you're at well-known brand today, but early stages, you were employee one.
Yeah.
And then you were employee at least single digits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that look early stages? And what I would love to hear a story or two of like the early stages, because it helps, I think, everyone that's listening go, oh my gosh, I'm starting this way too.
Yeah. So like, I can start from like kind of the origins of Atomic. And before we created Atomic Object, the services company, we were starting on a .com kind of 1.0, right, product company, right? And it was classic.com 1.0. So Carl, who was a professor at Grand Valley, took a sabbatical, and he was going to lead engineering for this startup, right? And it was classic in so many ways because we were doing really cool stuff, really cool technical stuff. And the idea was we were going to build software to make it easier to write software. So very meta, right? So there was some VC money, but there was no client, there was no product market fit. There was just like, let's just build cool technology that we can grow on. And, the world was super hot for technology, and then it all imploded, right? And at that time too, everyone's like, get out of technology. It's all going to India and Eastern Europe. And
I think that's right when I was finishing my computer science
that's
degree.
right when you were finishing your computer science degree, yeah. And we're like, shoot, like
Doing it for the love.
doing it for the love, that's right.
Yeah.
So at that point, like Carl didn't want to go back to academia. He was having too much fun, like experimenting with these new agile practices and whatnot. And he said, well, there's just some projects that are never going to make sense to outsource. They're just too small. So like we decided to build this service company, and for the first 5 years of the company, all of our revenue was within like a 20-mile radius of Grand Rapids. So it was like finding local customers. These were people that like ex-students of Carl's that he'd taught that were like working in local companies, and we'd built some pretty cool software for them. And at that time, we never really said, hey, we're gonna do just finance software, or we're gonna do just educational software, or we're gonna do just Java or just .NET.
Industry segmentation.
Or any segmentation. Basically, we'd work for whoever would hire us,
Yeah.
right? And so it was very, very scrappy.
With the segmentation on companies that were looking to innovate and use new quality agile practices
Yes.
to have longer term
Yes.
cost effectiveness.
Yes, yeah. And we had a pretty strong value offering too, because we were mostly like a younger team, right? So we were able to sell at a pretty low cost point too, to break into the market, and that really helped as well.
And at the same time, the younger team meant that we never had to go through agile transformation.
Yes.
This was the way that our
From
people
the
were
beginning.
coming out of school, and we're also the ones at that time. I remember in the computer science curriculum, it was like an extra credit effort, not expected, to do test automation. And if you could get traction in any of these early phase experimental test automation frameworks, that was above and beyond. So really what I saw happening was the best and the brightest and the most ambitious and the most curious who loved to push the boundaries were coming into this company. And we were young in our career, which allowed us to not command as high of a wage. And we could come into companies where people were in the job for 10 or 20 years and they weren't understanding, I mean, let alone Agile, they didn't understand object-oriented programming or many of the other things that were growing in use and popularity, so we could be highly effective.
It was a really fun time for the company.
Yeah.
Learning a lot, growing a lot.
And then
It was
from the brand
exciting.
awareness, we've also been highly involved exercising that teach and learn value in the community. So Atomic and our founder, Carl and Bill, started Software GR, which is now most recently moved into our local Merge conference, but it started with a speaker series. And we would bring in people doing a lot of innovative work and using these practices and help sharpen the saw, spread knowledge. Over time, Mike and I, we've always been involved in when we have startup incubators, come and do mentorship. When you have design meetups or dev meetups or conferences, sponsor those, go speak. And then we'd also do some white papers. We did more of that then prior to blogging, but we'd go to national conferences that were around agile methods or specific frameworks or in the 04, 05, 06, O'Reilly, the publishing company, used to do the open source convention, OSCON, out in Portland. So you'd show up and you'd meet people that were thought leaders at that time. That builds referral networks. And what we really saw is going out, whether it's Portland, San Francisco, New York, Boston, our people are as good or if not better in the top 10% of people who know what they're doing in the industry. So that was a really good way for us to not only build brand, but externally benchmark and start to bring in national clients. And by 08, 09, on average, any given year, we'd be doing 50% of our revenue or was outside of the region.
That's cool to see how you grew from, what did you say the radius was, like 10 miles,
20,
20
yeah,
miles?
yeah.
To,
Yeah.
now it's kind of national.
Yeah.
And now you're going even beyond that. You just opened a Raleigh office.
Correct, yeah.
And
Yeah.
at Chicago now too, right?
Yeah. And so we're still doing regional and geographic segmentation, which these days is a little unusual for tech, for an industry that's embracing and a lot of people are desiring all remote work. But we intentionally are doing that. We still believe that we can be an extraordinarily great local partner. And being in the Midwest, it means we're adjacent to the East Coast and West Coast time zones. It's something we joked about pre-pandemic, but we've always said the best collaboration tool is an airplane. We'll get on a flight and we're going to come, especially in early stages of projects and at key inflection points where you're shifting from certain areas of the product to a new area, you get together and you collaborate because creative cross-discipline work that it is collaborative by its very nature on the early phases, and it's best on elbow to elbow. And it allows for, to me, it comes back to that throughput. A lot of, as I've been reflecting on even the quality thing, it's all about throughput, and it's about accelerating the development, and it's accelerating, the other side of the coin of failure is learning. And I've been recently talking a lot about joyful stubbornness to continue to just in a joyful struggle. That's what it is in new product development. You're probably in the zone of success, but you just need to shift. And when you shift, because all the minds in the room that can shift fast are there, you can move faster. So yeah, the Raleigh office at this time period, we launched Chicago actually before that in the midst still when there was concerns with the virus in 21 and had started incubating the Raleigh office when Taylor and Ryan, who co-lead that office, came to us, and we were incubating that all through 22, and they moved this summer. Anjali and Louis, their team, were bringing people out from within the culture as a seed team to go to that new market, and they've all moved this summer, which is exciting.
That's awesome.
I like that term, joyful stubbornness. It reminds me of like another one of my favorite terms is like I like lazy developers, right? Not because I want like truly people that are lazy, but
Automation.
lazy developers are like, I'm tired of doing this thing manually. I'm gonna build a script or a tool to do it for me, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to automate my problem away because I'm tired of doing that problem and I want to work on something more interesting.
Yeah, work smarter.
Exactly.
That's awesome. And I think one of the things that really drew me to Atomic too is the three of us had a meeting a while ago, and it was like, what we're doing at City of Build the Right Thing you mentioned, and you guys get it. Like the minute we talked about it, you were like, oh my gosh, yes, I understand that there's a significant difference between building the thing right and building the right thing. And so
Absolutely.
I would love to hear you guys' like, what have you seen coming through Atomic and your learnings of that early stage? You know, as you're starting to see early stage people come to you, I'm sure you've had projects, whether they're startups or they're corporate.
Yes.
What are some learnings you've learned?
Yeah. I think it's good to separate those two into two different buckets.
Yeah.
Because
Where do you want to start?
Yeah, let's start with startups because
Okay.
I think that a lot of times we think that like a lot of the same lessons like map perfectly to corporate, and I think some of the lessons map, but I think corporate also has some different advantages that they shouldn't forget about,
And some disadvantages.
and some disadvantages. Yeah.
Or entrenched thinking and ways of working, yes. So start with startups.
Yeah.
All right, what do you want to start with? I look at it, success. Success is like the other side of the coin of perils and pitfalls. Is there a way you'd like us to come at it?
Let's talk about what you've seen succeed, and then let's go into pitfalls.
Yeah.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
So what I've seen succeed is you have founders, co-founders that have the right amount of resources to explore their problem sufficiently enough to get a very strong sense of product market fit before they start to grow and work with a team to bring that product to scale.
We've commonly seen this as like your team has the hacker, the hipster, and the hustler, right?
Yes.
As the joking ways of like, hey, you've got a really strong designer, you've got a really strong developer, and you've got someone who can do some growth hacking, someone who can like really like hone in on the business and like work with the clients. And if you can bring that core group together, you can do lots of really great, quick, rapid experiments to figure stuff out, right? And a lot of times, when you're doing that stuff, you want to optimize for learning, and not necessarily quality, because like whatever you're creating, like you don't have to be married to it. You can throw it away. And these are people that come in and they get really passionate about the problem they're solving, and less passionate about their initial solution that they're bringing to bear. Right? I find so often people they fall in love with the solution that they've thought of to some problem that they have, and it might be almost right, but not quite right. And the people that really fall in love with the problem and subordinate everything else to the problem, I find those are the ones that can really start to find some traction.
I agree. I want to try and phrase this in the things that work rather than the perils and pitfalls. But to put the what works on it is, you have, it's either a very multi-talented individual or it's a small group of folks. And one of the contexts with startups, it's most people are dealing with resource constraints. And so if, a scenario could be you have people who can live cheap and, or can work a part-time job or have some sort of income that subsidizes their ability to explore the problem space. And you really do need to think, usually it's a technical person who can do some things in the software realm to get software reasonably designed and developed, even if it's a low code, no code, or prototype situation. But someone also needs to be entrepreneurial minded. They have to have a marketing mind. They got to think about go to market and test. They got to have a business mind. Like if we're gonna, what does a pro forma P&L look like if we can start to get traction in some way? And do I need to go raise capital? And what is that going to mean? And how much is that going to distract us? But the people that I feel fall in love with the problem, to Mike's point, get really scrappy on exploring that problem and look to get traction. And usually I think a way that they succeed as well is they go do guerrilla research, they talk to everybody, they tell everybody about their problem, they're sponges for information, and they can build momentum even within their network to get people's points of view, and they continue to learn their way forward, maybe through some joyful stubbornness and joyful struggle, but you find success. The people that I see sometimes fall in love with the idea. They clam up, they don't want to talk about it, they believe the idea is all the value, they want to throw an NDA at anyone they want to talk to, yeah. And it's, just to repeat it again, it's said many times, it's most people, if you're going to talk to successful people about your idea, it's unlikely they'll steal it. They don't have the time. They're busy riding their own train of success.
So I want to pull on a thread you mentioned, resource constraint.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad? Because one of the things that I see with you guys is if they, it could be a good thing they have a lot of money. It also could be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Have you seen
Yes.
both sides of that coin at Atomic?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have.
absolutely.
I've yet to see a startup that had too much funding, but I have seen a corporation with too much funding, and it was some work we had applied for a number of years ago and went through an RFP process, and it's with a very large banking organization that's doing some humanitarian work. And at the very last moment, another very large tech company came to the table and said, hey, our VP talked to your VP, we'll do this work for free. So, but they still liked us. So they're like, hey, we'd like you still to come on, build some tools for us, do some
Consult on road
roadmap,
mapping and-
specification. And what I found was like these two organizations, because there was no money, and money's a really good constraint for innovation. I think this is what you're getting at. Like it's a focusing thing. What we would find with this organization is the organization just wanted every feature to be built. And the engineering team wanted them to like still prioritize features and figure out, and they ended up with a Frankenstein product. Like it was all things to all people. It was a bit of a buggy mess. It was like a frustrating effort. And that really taught me the lesson, like, ooh, like money, budget is a really solid constraint when it comes to software, because creative people who are building the software, they can have so many ideas, right? And this can get so wide and divergent, but the money or the budget like forces people to
It's a
make
focusing
decisions. It's a
function.
focusing function. So I think the same can be true for startups, right? So I do have a constrained budget. I do have like constraints on what I can do. So like I might not be able to go and build like the be all end all product out of the gate. And that's probably good, because you probably don't have enough learning about your problem to do that effectively.
So coming to you guys, you guys are obviously a premier, software is expensive, right?
Yes.
And so how let's shift to the pitfalls. What are some pitfalls you've seen with startups and or corporates? I mean, we could merge both
Maybe
here.
we'll stay on startups just for a bit.
Keep them consistent.
For us, over time, we won't work with startups that can't articulate their problem. Like if you haven't picked a problem or focused on a problem, we don't want to work with you. There might be people, it's like, well, we have an idea of a primary revenue stream, but here's our 3 ideas for our secondary and then our tertiary, and we think we could like monetize the exhaust of this, and there's going to be value streams on the data we create, or maybe we'll get into, and it's like, pick your problem.
It's not good for them
Well,
or you.
Yeah, and
It's
then
not-
go.
yeah,
it's
exactly.
because what'll happen is our team knows how to do quality, and that is very important later. But you don't want to go hire a team that's going to do high quality, production quality, scale quality software when you might be just going across a spectrum within a potential strike zone of the right problem. And that problem is usually a series of small needs, in adjacent spaces, and you got to find your entry, like what's going to get us into market and get interest of our customer. You need to explore. So if people haven't focused on what that is yet, we don't want to work with them. And then we will also give potential customers who haven't explored it in a low fidelity way, will say they need to work with a company like yours, like City Innovations, stand some things up, do more manual processes behind the scenes, have ideas of what your go-to-market strategy is going to be. A lot of times we see everyone focuses on building the product, building the solution, and it is costly, but it's also really costly to go to market. It's costly to get people's attention. And then how do you learn through what might it cost to convert? What's the cost of customer acquisition? What are your hypotheses on pricing and conversion? What are your hypotheses on lifetime value of that customer? And we really like to start on the startup side, especially if it's first-time entrepreneurs, which have, as you'd imagine, like the higher failure rate. It's like, this is very, very risky. And the product market fit is the risk. To us, that's the hard risk that should really be focused on, and you should figure out how to reduce that risk as early as possible. The more we've been in the startup and product world, we view ourselves when it's time to scale, we take stupid risk off the table, is what Mike and I have internally called it. It's like, if you're gonna fail at your startup for a technical reason, a lot of software, we're not bending the laws of physics. This isn't highly experimental, high science. It's bringing together a lot of technology stacks in the right way. And there's still, there's craft, and there's people who do it really poorly as well. But it's a different risk profile than product market fit risk.
Sometimes
and you can buy it. You can buy it and be on market for high quality practitioners.
Right.
Sometimes we'll see that too, where someone will get past that first gate. They'll do something quickly, iteratively, maybe not as high quality, and they'll start to get product market fit. Okay, now we're like a great firm to like help them take it to the next level. But sometimes then they'll fall into a little bit of like the sunk cost fallacy. Like let's take my like low quality solution and build on it. Where it's like, now is the time to like not mess around with things.
Build a foundation.
Let's and be willing to like step away from that and build something that now you can build to actually scale and make your business successful.
Dude, what about corporates? Let's change
Yeah.
this.
Let's switch
I'd
gears.
love to hear a little bit about
Yeah.
the corporate side.
So what's really cool about corporate enterprise is they've already found their cash cow.
Right.
At one point in history, they did something really innovative that created a tremendous amount of value, and you likely don't have to go raise debt or through equity investors. You can fund this out of cash.
The challenge with that is these companies were very innovative at one point, and then they said, okay, how do we improve operations better? And they became very structured, and they became built around protecting the cash cow and operationalizing it. And a lot of times that organizational structure will like chew up and spit out new ideas because it puts the cash cow in danger.
At risk.
At risk. So a lot of times what we find is like, okay, if you're going to be building an innovative product that's like maybe cross-cutting multiple parts of your business, right? Do you have the right organizational structure in place for that? Or are you saying like, well, we're gonna get some money from this department and this department and this department to like stitch it all together? Or is there an actual like decision maker that can cross-cut and like beat down that bureaucracy, right? So we'll find this a lot of times in like corporate IT, right? And it makes a lot of sense. So like if you're an established company and you're a corporate IT leader, right? Like what are you judged by? You're judged by like making sure that the operations are standing up, making sure your downtime is really low, making sure stuff doesn't break. Now let's talk about building a new and innovative product. What are you judged by? You're judged by disruption, breaking things, like bringing new cool things to the table. Like these are at odds. So are you creating the environment and the incentives to innovate, allow the business to still run, but still innovate, right? So there's business and structure problems that like startups don't have to deal with. They don't have that. It's a downside. They don't have the cash, but they don't have the bureaucracy, right?
Yeah, look at it. It's like a mindset thing. Roger Martin, business prof again, and wrote Where to Play, How to Win, the Playing to Win framework on strategy. And say really in the how to win, there's only two fundamental choices. One is differentiation and the other is cost leadership. And cost leadership doesn't mean the lowest cost, it means you can produce at the lowest cost. So that might mean you have price parity or even a slightly higher price than your other competitors, but you can produce at such a low cost, you can protect your operations through higher margins. And established enterprise, they succeeded, they innovated. Well, what's happened over the last 25 years? Every product offering follows a commoditization curve. So you start dipping your toes into cost management mindset and you're looking for efficiencies at scale, which usually means specialization, which usually means org structures that get highly departmentalized around operations, not around product development. And then what will happen when it comes to like half one leg in operations, half one leg in innovation, you could get a large enterprise structure, potentially matrix done, and you're like, okay, here's the innovation team, but each one on the team still reports up to an operational departmental manager. And when you think like there's a fire in operations, what's getting people's attention? And what happens to that product leader who also has operational responsibilities? They're distracted. I was rereading Ellie Goldratt, the Israeli physicist who was the godfather of the theory constraints, which is another like lean methodology. In his book Critical Chain, and it's told through like a fictitious story, a fable. But they bring out truths, and they say the common reason innovation projects are late or risks aren't mitigated is because the project manager, the product manager is distracted. And so you see this a lot in enterprise. It's distracted and you don't get the high throughput because it's a lack of focus across all the practitioner spaces. And Mike brought this out too. A lot of times budgeting is done then through departmental budgeting. And even so the products that are already in market, maybe it's a company, it's a physical product, and marketing has a budget to operate, engineering has a budget to operate, and they're gonna kind of update and maintain or add tweaks or new features, and they all are gonna look at spend out of that budget to get something new shipping in the next calendar year. But when you take that mentality into new product development, let's say they want to do digital innovation and create mobile applications that are going to help with product registration, warranty, and replenishment things on a physical thing they used to sell, like the razor blade model replacement. If you try and parcel that up out of multiple budgets and you're bringing an organization like IT to the table who's looking for uptime and stability, you don't get what we like to call the one neck to choke. And that's what the advantage of what startups have is you have tranched funding of a highly focused, singular focused, multidisciplinary, high throughput oriented team that has a goal with a known calendar deadline and a burn rate on money. And so I think the enterprises that get it right, they carve off and they invest like a startup would invest. And they see their organization not as just leaning into digital innovation and digital transformation, but you think like a capital allocator and you say, we think we can get this type of return. We're going to tranche investment in. We want to de-risk through product market fit. A lot of times you might be doing this at a portfolio level. We have half a dozen and we're going to start investing and you start to feed your winners. Just like if you were building a venture fund and you had a portfolio of investments. No. And you keep those people firewalled off. And then what I see too, sorry to keep rattling off on this, you look at your IT organization because oftentimes you do need a window to be able to read and write out of operational data, is you get a couple special folks in IT and you say, you are here to saddle up with app dev engineers to give them access to data and the ability to read into it. And you figure out, even if you have to have an architecture where data is pushed out of operational systems and it's a firewalled off area with maybe a little bit of latency, and just create whatever the rigorous structure is needed to be able to play with operational data. But don't let the app dev team get bottlenecked on IT and IT governance. And then I don't know if you want to take maybe like don't scale it before you nail it. And
and just, I mean, I think when we talk about like from a funding standpoint, we think about corporations, right? They have some pretty big advantages, right? Like they have real customers, and generally they're innovating around some of their existing products, so they're going to have a way higher success rate of like finding fit than startups, right? And to Shawn's point, like if they're thinking about it from a corporate level, like we're investing into doing this, they can also think about it from, we talked about like in the startup world, like maybe you want to start like with a little less quality as you're kind of like meandering around, and then be willing to kind of throw it away and build quality, right? If you're a corporation, you can like once you have a pretty good idea of that product idea, start with quality because you already have scale. So you probably don't have time to throw it away and start over, right? And like the cost of starting with quality is so small compared to like the opportunity of like hitting the market. And that's just like a fundamentally different from like a startup to a corporation.
I agree with you, but I also want to back you up a little bit. I think there's an inflection point because it really is, you talk about the 0 to 1, and it's a little bit like, well, what's the 0 to 0.5 or just shy of 1? And this is where I see the quality in the brand standards also hold enterprise back because they think to go test anything, it has to be on parity with their current product and market.
Can't tarnish their
You
brand.
can't
Yes.
tarnish the brand. And I think, no, go nail it. And as long as you provide beta customers the right context, you can have something that looks fairly roughed in. You can tell them there's probably some bugginess on the fringes, but you can give people a sense of exclusivity, a voice. I think people be surprised when you feel as a customer, ooh, they want my input, my ideas, my use, and my feedback. And it's a diamond in the rough, but it's still interesting, dude. Now, okay, go do quality.
We've also seen some corporations like do some of these products under different brands as well,
Right.
to try and shield themselves from some of that risk.
Some of the risk. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. All the things you guys are describing at Citi, we refer to it as, for the corporate side, as like product market org fit. Like there's a third component.
Yeah.
So we kind of add that org fit and all the things of fear of failure, the optimization mindset versus embracing of, hey, when we allocate these monies, some of this could be just shot. It's the learnings we're after.
Yeah.
So
And it's
I love
that
it.
optimization mindset. It gets back to that is the cost mindset, not the throughput mindset. And I feel when you look at early phase software, it is expensive, but it is very changeable. And you're investing in non-recurring design and engineering to build a profit engine for the future that hopefully has a 10-year plus run. Technology moves fast, but depending, how close you are to the UI versus backend systems, as you get more to the backend, that should stand up for a decade or more. Why is that the thing you want to cost optimize? Like I had this metaphor, and I'm not a real sports guy, but I feel it's almost like trying to hit a long putt with a blindfold on. It's like, wouldn't you rather just do quality right at the start, invest in the set that foundation that you can build off of it really, really, really well, instead of looking to cost optimize? Because what happens when you cost optimize, you're commonly going to sacrifice quality or increase time. And that's going to get you to market later, which is going to get you to revenue later. So when you're looking at like a stream of inflows and outflows of cash, like a net present value calculation, the ROI doesn't look that good. And what happens too, especially when you sacrifice quality, it plagues you forever. And you get into the area of endless break fix cycles where we release new things. I think there's a lot of ways. It's very tough to exactly create a quantitative convincing model, but we've seen it qualitatively where it's like, well, we can't ship, we can't do continuous deployment, we release new things, that breaks other things. Now we have to fix those things.
And I'm sure
Are
a
we
lot of
seeing
your-
like a lower adoption of customers? Are we seeing more customer churn? How do these, what is the opportunity cost of our product team and our executive leadership to be focused on fixing things that shouldn't be broken? And what is that distracting from other value creation activities they could be doing?
And I'm sure a lot of your viewers have experienced this, right? And this is like, we talked about when Atomic started, like we were really big into this like test automation and things like that, right? And the world of software has gotten better in the last 20 years, but it's still pretty weak in my opinion, right? Where, I think people people are used to this world still of like, well, we added this feature to this application and then this stuff over here broke. And we added this feature and this stuff over here broke, right? And that's just like back to Shawn's point of like, you're in this endless cycle of like break fix because you never started with a quality base. And
then I'll talk about the time thing. It's like we're going to go mitigate or we're going to reduce costs by going offshore. Okay. So you don't have all the people in the room. It's not the cross-discipline team. You got a dev unit that's disembodied from the business leadership. You have asynchronous communication, maybe at minimum a couple hours of synchronous time zone overlap. Like all of this, and people, especially through the, perhaps some of us through the pandemic who are on Zoom all the time and all the asynchronous thing, it's just frustrating. It's friction. So you have the people that are trying to do innovation are just feeling friction, they're feeling agitation or frustration, and you have calendar time, day in, day out on break fix cycles, and it's like, really? Is that the thing which is gonna delight your customers and drive customer attraction, retention, profitability, price tolerance, all of it?
not to mention cultural challenges, right? Like
Sure.
I think one of the things when you're building digital products, you want people that are doing the actual implementation of that stuff to feel empowered and emboldened to come back to the business and be like, I think that idea is not good, and this is why. And this is how we need to tweak it and change it, as opposed to like, you know best, we'll implement it that way.
We've also seen so often in the corporation mindset of new feature plug out, like these people in a room will create new features without talking to customers, and they won't even know what current features are being used and what new features to add. And like I think you mentioned Frankenstein, it turns into a Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's ways technically you can do that thing, stuff like that as well. Proxies in later phase development for direct customer conversation, but I think you should still do both. Having analytics within your app of what have we released that's not being used, why were we wrong, what are the causes of it. Now, to me, that's like all of that gives you data to focus your effort to have conversations.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you guys have been a tremendous wealth of knowledge. You have a ton of experience. It's evident, I think, to our viewers too, in the corporate side and the startup side. So anything else? I mean, I would love to, what's next for Atomic? What's next? What's the next steps for you guys?
Yeah, we're in the midst of launching Raleigh, and we've had a vision, a 20-year vision. We're an employee-owned company, and we're building the company and have been built to last. We're not looking to build and flip. We target paced growth. Mike and I want to continue like on our roots and a focus on a love of learning. And to us, the love of learning, it's really applied learning and helping our customers on the, not the bleeding edge, the irresponsible bleeding edge, but just into the edge of responsible production-worthy technology. And that line is always moving year over year to do that on really big scale, high impact projects. So for us, the geographic growth and the company growth has been twofold. One, can it give our people more interesting careers to lead and serve the company at different levels and kind of pay it forward to us? A lot of the people that are the best leaders of the company are looking to pay it forward to the new folks coming in for the love of learning and making things. And then our larger size makes us look less risky to enterprise customers. So what commonly happens in software consulting is a really strong technical practitioner, whether it's either on the design or the dev front, grows to about 10 to 15 people and realize they don't like running a business. Oftentimes like the E-Myth, the manager, the entrepreneur, the technician, you might really have an entrepreneurial technician who then does not want to be a manager and operator. And so you'll get Accenture, McKinsey will happily buy you and add you to the dev army, the design and dev army that they want to throw over the wall from the strategy work. We don't, we're not doing that. We have gone through a generation of leadership succession, an employee ownership program, which will pass equity on to future employee owners. We have no outside shareholders. and we want to build the company. We just passed 100 employees, and when we can stay, and we'll grow still at pace growth over that, to be able to have our clients entrust us with highly complex problems. And that's the virtuous cycle. We get talented people that can solve those problems very effectively for those customers and help them create tremendous value. And then we get the awesome problems that help us attract and retain really great people. And, what is it? Simon Sinek talked about like the endless game. We create milestones of company growth, but I think it will just be a continuous joy of learning. Tech keeps moving. There's always new problems to solve. There's always new value for companies to provide. And we're going to keep enjoying the journey of doing it and keeping a stable place where people can have long careers.
Awesome. Cool. Anything you say, Mike, as a closer to the conversation?
Yeah, I just kind of adding on to what Shawn said. Like in the space we operate in, there's like a fair amount of firms that are like 30 or less. And then there's a couple firms that are just behemoth giants, like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, right? And there's very few kind of in that middle sweet spot.
It's a bimodal distribution.
It's a bimodal distribution, that's right. So like I like to think we're like this very nice sweet spot both for the atoms, the people, our employees, so we kind of play on the atomic theme for a lot of things, and our clients, where we are certainly big enough to take on like our clients' biggest challenges and succeed there, but we're also small enough that the business that those clients give us matters. So like when you're the client, like we care about your success because like we have to, right? Like we want to, but we also have to. It's a survival thing, right? So I think that's it's a pretty interesting place to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen Atomic grow, and I'm excited to see your next chapter of growth. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for coming today and talking.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
inviting us to the good conversation.
Oh, absolutely.